pathways are hijacked and rewiring more for dependency and addiction, right? Rather than the normal, healthy things that our brain needs to do. So I wanted to have a little bit of an example of some of the effects of alcohol. I thought that was important. So if you look on the left, that's a 15-year-old male non-drinker, and then we have on the right the 15-year-old male heavy drinker. And you can see there's a pretty big contrast as far as what's going on in the brain. Now, I like to show this to the teenagers that I work with because I think that it helps them have a little better grasp. So anyway, I'll just play it for you. It's a cartoon. Oh, hold on. What do I need to do to get this to play?
Oh, now use the mouse.
Okay.
During our teenage years, how we interact with the world changes. We seek out new interests and experiences, take more risks, and spend more time with our friends and less with our family. These behaviours have developed through evolution to make sure we push ourselves so that we learn to become independent from our parents. By putting ourselves in new and challenging situations, different parts of our brain learn to work together, forming brain circuits that can communicate with each other rapidly to help us respond in different ways. Ensuring that our brain is wired in the right way during the teenage years with strong and healthy brain circuits is critical to our future and how we get the most out of life. Three of the most important circuits that are developing during this period are those involved in learning and memory, motivation, and mood. Learning and memory circuits control our ability to receive, store, and recall information. Our motivation circuit is supported by an inbuilt reward system that helps us to decide if something is important and whether we should do something to get it. Our mood is shaped by emotional circuits that interpret how we experience and react to different situations and interactions. Making sure these particular circuits wire in the right way during our teenage years is the brain's own occupational health and safety team, the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system is a complex and delicate brain system which helps to fine-tune communication within these circuits, ensuring the wiring is assembled correctly, damaged cells are repaired, and the right connections are strengthened for the future. When looking into the effect of cannabis on the brain, scientists found that we naturally produce a brain chemical called anandamide that is similar to cannabis. Concentrations of anandamide are delicately calibrated for it to accomplish its critical role within the endocannabinoid system. This is why, if we add cannabis into the brain, it causes the endocannabinoid system to become flooded with cannabis chemicals. It's a bit like dumping a bucket of salt on your chips instead of a pinch. Or like stadium speakers being plugged into your iPod. Constantly disrupting the endocannabinoid system with cannabis impacts how your brain develops, and in particular, how the mood, motivation, and learning and memory circuits get wired. Short-term memory loss is a common characteristic of long-term heavy cannabis use, because when you use cannabis, less information gets saved as memories. This is why it's harder to learn and remember new information, which can lead to significant drops in school grades. Cannabis can reduce your ability to focus attention, to organise yourself and make decisions, not just when you're using cannabis, but for weeks afterwards. Cannabis use can also lead to loss of motivation. Heavy users can feel detached and disinterested in things they used to like, such as sports, hobbies, and catching up with friends. It can also lead to low self-confidence that in turn affects your mood, making it more difficult to manage everyday stresses, worries, and frustrations, which can result in prolonged low mood, anxiety, and depression. While these effects are commonly experienced by people who use cannabis regularly, new research suggests that these effects are worse and more permanent for people who start using cannabis while their brain is still developing. This is because the endocannabinoid system plays a central role in the development of your neural circuitry during the teenage years. The developing brain has a pretty good blueprint to work off, but our experiences and interactions with the outside world also help to shape these neural circuits that we will rely on as adults. Your teenage years are an adventure that sets you up for life. Enjoy the ride and look after your brain. It's the only one you've got.
So like I said, it's geared more towards teenagers, but it does kind of help break it down for them and make it, give it more simple terms, if that makes sense. And then I thought, well, let's also share. Okay, how do I get out of this now?
If you just click the slide out of the picture. Nope, go down.
Okay.
Now click.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to give you some examples of what a healthy brain looks like, and these are generally taken from the brainplace.com, Amon's clinics, or Dr. Amen, excuse me, Daniel Amen. He has been doing brain scans for, I don't even know how many years, 20 plus years, and so he's got some really powerful images. So these are healthy brains, and the bluish one up in the upper left, that is actually the bottom aspect of the brain, looking at it from underneath, and the other ones are looking some from the side, and then also the bottom right is looking at it from on top. Now this is an adolescent brain, 18 years old with 3 years of pot use with about 4 times a week. And as you can see, there's a lot going on there. Up in the number 1, that's the prefrontal cortex. Obviously there's a lot of damage that's occurring. One of the things I try to help people understand is that there's real brain injury that occurs from substance use. And of course, you know, our society really has this thing that marijuana isn't so bad, but I don't think a pitcher can lie. And that doesn't mean that people can't play catch up, can't learn, you know, after this. Because I know that a lot of the clients that I work with actually do. They, as they're working with me and they're, you know, moving on, they're staying sober, their brain is healing, and they're able to play, I call it playing catch up. I'm not sure how else to call it, but you know, if they've been stunted back here, right, developmentally at 14, 15, 16 years old, now they're playing catch up, and I'm not saying it's impossible. Do they really get back everything that they lost? Probably not, which is again why it's so important for us to have that, you know, to get them in recovery, get them in treatment so that they can stop as soon as possible. And I guess that's why I'm so passionate about this with kids, is because I don't want them having a lifelong addiction. All right, this one here is the brain during alcohol and drug use. So this is going to be the before, and this is directly after. This is 1 year later. So you can see that there is healing that occurs. Of course, the sooner we get them to stop, you know, the better chance we have of them being able to, you know, recover more fully. But anything, I will take anything I can get to get these kids to have times of abstinence so we have opportunity for their brain to heal. So predictors of lifelong addiction issues, one of the things I try to teach the kids is early onset. And they get this down pretty well because I drill at home, that the earlier somebody begins actively using substances, the more likely they are in adulthood to have full-blown addiction issues. Again, why it's so imperative for us to get these kids in treatment, and I just think in abstinence and sobriety and so on, because I don't want to see them, you know, living with this. Talks about alcohol. A child who begins drinking before the age of 15, 5 times more likely to develop alcohol problems than those who started after 21. And every year that an adolescent delays alcohol use, their chance of becoming addicted to alcohol drops by 14%. So that's some real positive information about, you know, just again, it's like why it's so important to keep these kids away from substances and to get them to quit as quickly as we can if they are using. And then references. I mean, I'll open it to questions. I know it's kind of brief, but I wanted to be able to give you some information on how substances affect the brain, especially the alcohol and marijuana thing, considering that, I just think, Melissa, I think about all the times we talked about where it's so normalized. That's just stuff kids do. That's normal, they do that. No, they don't all do that. And I really caution parents, because like you were talking about, Melissa, what I see with the kids that we're working with is that window has just really closed, really gotten shorter. We'd have, a long period of alcohol or pot use prior to using other stronger drugs. But what we see now is that that window is closing. It's getting more quickly that they are getting to that. They are jumping right to these harder drugs. And we're talking IV, meth and heroin use. They're playing with the, big leagues now. And so I don't want them to get to that point. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm not familiar with your choices group. I pretty much have always worked with adults in the community. So you work with kids. What age do you have to be with participate?
We're going to get to that.
Oh, sorry.
Boy, she can answer
She's
now.
on it.
We are going to get
She
she's
wanted a
talk all
question.
about she's going to talk all about the group. So.
Okay.
Cool.
How does the use of Concerta, Adderall affect the brain development of, say, like 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old?
I know less about that, I'm just going to be honest, but a great place to go is that Amon's clinic. It's actually on here. He does a lot of research around all kinds of things. It's not just about substance abuse. Like when I was doing putting it together last night, he has stuff on like how schizophrenia affects brain development and so on, and how it functions, and so I'm sure that he probably has stuff on there regarding those medications as well. Yeah.
On the catch-up syndrome, I was always told that intellectually catch-up is possible. Emotionally, much more difficult.
It is more difficult.
If you're starting to use, at 12, 13, 14, and use for a period of years, the immaturity, the emotional deficits that you face, it's much more difficult to catch up and gain back what you lost.
It is, and in fact, when prior to Peaceful Solutions, I was with WASA Health, which is the medication-assisted treatment program here. I was there for 11 years, and that was one of the things I tried to help the staff there understand, because we'd have adults, right, like you're talking about, acting out and throwing adult versions of tantrums, and it's because, and I tried to help them understand, well, wait a minute, you don't have a 40-year-old man or woman in your office. You have a 14, 15, 16-year-old developmentally, right, with all of the sometimes a lot of the concrete thinking, and so their skills are very limited. And the other thing I try to help the kids that I work with understand is that as their substance use is going on, it has like this negative relationship, right, with their natural coping skills. Those are going down as their drug use is going up. And so all these things that people that have never used substances may take for granted, their ability to cope with stressful situations without using, these kids don't have, or these adults that have been using for a lot of years don't have. So, thank you. Other questions or thoughts? Thank you.
Okay. Before I bring Dan up, one thing that's in front of you is I apologize, it's small, but you can actually download the electronic copy on our website if you go into this appointment today. It's already preloaded, and as are the PowerPoint presentations and other handouts today. But this handout, the one that's loaded is revised in 2014, so it's the most up-to-date, looking at drugs, brain, behavior, and the science of addiction. So it does break down some of those, how whatever drug it is, whether it's a depressant, a stimulant, a hallucinogen, or cannabis, which is its own class of drug, how those impact your brain, as well as how you can overcome addiction, but even just why somebody may start in the first place. And I know Deb's going to go through that a little bit, but I think this is a great resource if you're looking for more information. So again, I'd suggest downloading the whole thing if you'd like, but to save on copies, I didn't. There's also half sheets out there that help. It says they're not called Gateway for, well, that's totally wrong English. They're called gateway for a reason, I believe. And there's a lot of controversy around that term gateway drugs. But when you look at what drugs those that have addictions later in life start with, we can call it whatever we want. We can say it's because of access in the home or access in the community, or it's because they're curious. Whatever drives them to that, it is typically alcohol, marijuana, less frequently now tobacco, but prescription medications is the growing star in all of that. So again, great resource. With that, I'm going to bring Dan up to talk about the complexities of treatment. And then we will go back to Deb, and she's going to talk about some of our local programs here. So do you have anything that you want me to put up? Do you want me to put up North Central's website or something?
Sure, you can do that. Hi, everybody.
Oops, not North Central.
Nort.
Oh, it's like northcen.org. I know this. I did not talk about the brown bag lunch coming up too, by the way.
We can touch on that a little bit.
Sure. I don't know where you want to go.
Sure, that's
It's
fine.
all you.
So my name's Daniel Shine, and I am the manager of Lakeside Recovery, which is North Central Healthcare's 21-day inpatient medically monitored treatment program. To go back a little bit further, I'd like to talk a little bit about why I'm very interested in talking about youth addiction and the complexities, because as we know, the complexities of youth addiction could be an entire seminar in and of itself. So I'll try to keep it brief. Well, Deb talked a little bit about the neurocognitive process for addiction. I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about what kind of treatment options we have and maybe what it might look like to work where I work, where we're constantly working with individuals that are youth that are dealing with addiction. So about 3 years ago, my first position that I had for North Central Healthcare was actually a mobile crisis professional. And I led up the mobile crisis program in Lincoln County, dealing with youth that, not only youth, adults that had severe mental health concerns. And I will tell you that there was a theme that I kept seeing over and over again, and it always tied in with substance abuse in some, not always, but in most situations, there was some kind of level of substance abuse that would tie into that co-occurring disorder. So naturally, about a year and a half ago, when I was asked to create a substance abuse recovery program as a substance abuse counselor, I jumped on that opportunity, because I think that our community really could benefit from that level of service. So something that not a lot of people know, though, is as I was creating that program too, I also created a team of substance abuse counselors that could offer services within our psychiatric inpatient unit and ambulatory detox unit. So what I'm going to talk to you today about a little bit is what it is that being in the psychiatric inpatient unit, what kind of level of service that we offer to youth, because it is complex. So I'll do my best to explain it. So the process of youth coming onto the inpatient unit is not always the happiest situation, as you can imagine. Individuals that come to our inpatient unit don't always want to be there. A lot of them are brought in on 5115 detentions. Some of them are brought in on third-party petitions. Others will come in voluntarily. Less likely that they'll come in voluntarily, but the chances for intervention, as you would imagine, in that type of setting is very high. So a little bit of the complexity that I want to talk about, though, is when you're dealing with youth addiction, we send our treatment team over to work with youth that are on that unit. A lot of the assessments that we use in a typical setting for adults aren't necessarily applicable for youth. So we're talking like UPCs, ASAMs, things like that. And I actually brought some examples, and I'll hand them out later if you guys are interested. But a lot of the criteria that you'll see on those assessments specifically talk about people who have been using for a long period of time. So when we're talking with youth, and we're talking about potentially like an experimental phase where children are using different types of substances here and there, these types of assessments aren't necessarily applicable. So what we've done is we've created kind of hybrid assessments where we could pick pieces of other things and also factor in motivational aspects. So whether an individual really wants to go into treatment or they want to be faced with recovery options. We also then take in social theory aspects, so how can we integrate people back into the community after they leave, combined with a lot of intervention techniques. So first thing I wanted to say, the first thing that we do is the assessment, then we do brief intervention, which includes family, social support, what can they do in schools, are they interested in AA meetings, are they interested in NA meetings, there is such thing as a smart recovery meeting, so if they're not interested in the religious affiliation, are they interested in some kind of support setting. So that becomes complex too. So I'd like to kind of bring you into it, because imagine coming into an inpatient unit and working with an individual that doesn't necessarily want the help. So a lot of times what you do is you do the work of a case manager. So you come in and you work with that individual to determine what it is that they want, and you play off that motivation. So what I said before is when you're in a psychiatric inpatient unit, chances are you want to get out of a psychiatric inpatient unit. So in a lot of situations, you're willing to do whatever you can so that you can get there. So we use that by integrating the family, integrating those social aspects, integrating what can we do for schools, what can we do for that with those individuals. So when I do my assessments with individuals that are youth, and I determine that they meet a high level of criteria. So these are individuals that maybe use every day. Could be anything from, like Deb said, IV meth, IV heroin. I've seen LSD, I've seen mushrooms, I've seen THC. Prescription medications are huge in this area, and I say that with our youth, and I think I could say it 100 times and it probably wouldn't be as much as what I deal with. But so when you're working with those individuals that meet that high level of criteria, the real work becomes trying to find them treatment alternatives. Because with my program, Lakeside Recovery, we only take individuals that are 18 and above. But for youth that are 18, 17, 16 and below, there aren't as many options in our community. So what it becomes is a social work task of trying to find what types of options are available. And I actually brought this little Bible that I have of all the different treatment services. I've been to a lot of conferences, and what I do is I collect as many as I can, and I try to find which services are going to work for them. And I'll let you guys look through this later if you're interested, but the reality is that there are a lot of treatment services, but there are also barriers to getting them into treatment. So some of those barriers might include finances. So if your insurance doesn't cover treatment, where do you go? That seems to be a pretty common barrier that we face.
Did you want me to pass this?
If you'd like, yes, sorry. So if that's not the option, if you can't afford treatment, what other alternatives are there? So a natural continuum of care for youth in addiction would be dropping down from, if residential doesn't fit for them, to go to outpatient services where they can meet with a counselor, to link them up with youth community treatment where they can have a case manager that can be able to case manage them and continue to offer them services. CCCW can work with individuals if you need to work with funding, as well as counseling in schools, which I think Deb's going to talk about a little bit, but we also at North Central Healthcare have a counseling in schools program too, where we get in and we do counseling right there with school. So in the packet that I brought for you guys today, I did bring a couple risk factors for you. So high risk factors when working with individuals in the psychiatric inpatient unit are family history of addiction. If you're a male, you have a higher risk of addiction. If you have another mental health disorder, so if you have co-occurring disorders, you have a higher risk for addiction. Peer pressure, lack of family involvement, anxiety, depression, and loneliness, and taking highly addictive drugs. And I want to reiterate again that sometimes when I'm working with individuals, just not too long ago I worked with an individual that on my assessment hit every single drug that was in all those classifications, and that person was 16 years old. So I think the reality is that the need is there, the services maybe not so much right now. So where do we need to go, I think becomes the question. So what does our community need, and how do we make treatment appealing? It's like, how do you make treatment fun? That's like the number one question. If somebody can come up here and tell me how to make treatment fun for youth, I'm all for it. But I think that that's where our community is right now, is we're at a place where we need to start talking about, if we do want to emphasize prevention, what happens for the kids who don't make it? What happens for the kids who, with all of our emphasis being put in prevention, the ones that continue to use? So I think that coming together to start talking about that is our natural first step, just as it is for expanding larger programs for adults in the future. So how can you help? I think talking about it is going to be important. I think supporting youth with positive reinforcement. Shaming techniques don't always work with youth, because as you know, if you're in revolt and somebody shames you, you're probably going to revolt 10 times more. So how can you be positive and how can you continue to support becomes the question. So with that, I will answer any questions that you have, or if you guys want to come up with some fun ideas for treatment, I'll integrate them into my programs.
Can a parent force their child, if they're under the age of 18, into treatment?
I've seen it done with third-party petitions. However, the number one barrier that you'll find is that there's only one locked substance abuse recovery program in the state of Wisconsin that I've been able to find. So any other program that you get to, if they get to that program and they decide that they want to run out the door, they won't stop them.
And how far away are those places?
The closest one that I've found with that same situation where the child said that if I got there I would run away was Libertas, and that would be Green Bay. Can you imagine then having a child running around in Brown County? Yes, Ron?
Daniel, you talk about people not wanting to be there, and a while back, I read some studies that the results were that there's equal outcome for people that want to be in treatment and don't want to be in treatment. So the assumption is if something happens in the treatment process that provides a hook or an incentive for the kicking and screaming person. Is that still true? Do you still find that to be realistic?
Absolutely. I think that motivation, regardless of where it comes from, can be very effective. So if the motivation is truly to not come back to that situation that you're in now, so the same with the criminogenic population. So if you're working with individuals, is not going back to jail a big enough deterrent for them to stop using again? I think the answer is yes. Is it always going to work? I don't think so. But I do think that with youth, sometimes motivation is going to come in a variety of different ways. So we have to be creative as clinicians in order to come up with it.
So what that addresses, I hear so much that people say, well, he or she doesn't want treatment. We have to wait till that moment. And I think in some ways that's a fallacy, because regardless of whether they want treatment at the time, there's other factors that could happen to make treatment a reality for them. And we should probably be working on that, and not just saying they have to reach their bottom, because the bottom for many people is death.
Right. Or the point of no return, where
Right.
your consequences outweigh your ability to sustain lifestyle. I agree. I think overloading resources to the best of our ability and also coming together as a community is going to be vital. So I agree. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Dan before we move on to Deb? Talk about choices. No? Okay,
Thank you.
I'll get Deb's ready. Thank you, Dan. These officers running away. Things are bad.
Right. Alrighty, bet you didn't think you'd see me this easily again. Okay, so again, the Choices program, she asked me to talk about that. So I thought, well, how do we start this out? And so I thought, well, there's an image, right? How do you love a porcupine? Because anybody that's you're smiling. Anybody that's worked with kids, there's going to be a lot of attitude, not a lot of warm and fuzzies to begin with. But I always want to remember that this exact thing, the people that need it the most are probably going to be the least lovable when we work with them, at least initially. And so I wanted to put it in here. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but we look at all the different needs that we have in our life, the very basic, animal needs, not even necessarily human needs, right, are food and shelter and breathing and water, etc. And so those have to be in place before somebody can move to that next level of, we'd call it self-actualizing. And that's feeling safe. And I'll be honest, when the kids come in to work with us, they don't feel safe. So how they, I think about all the kids that we've worked with and how could you possibly self-actualize? And I always think about be all you can be, when I think of self-actualizing. Well, that's pretty difficult to do with a lot of the situations that they're living with when they come in to work with us. And so I wanted to give you some information, and there's a lot more that I had in this, that I actually took out. It was from a different presentation, but I wanted people to understand that there is a lot of correlation between substance abuse and trauma. So teens that experience sexual assault or physical assault, abuse, are actually 3 times more likely than others to have substance abuse issues. More than 70% of clients had a history of trauma. This is in surveying adolescents in substance abuse treatment. So this is kind of the philosophy that we work with. You know, our group is very much a trauma-informed care group. We just sort of embrace these kids and love to work with them. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what the Choices Track 1 is. This is actually a psychoeducational group. It's really more of us, you know, sharing information about, well, different topics. You know, why am I here? That's something they kind of process, you know, as we work with them. What brought them to this place? What are the, you know, the different behaviors that got them in trouble, things that they've been dealing with and so on. And then the consequences that they have, you know, endured as a result of that. And then looking at use, abuse, or addiction, so they can kind of answer that for themselves versus me telling them, because the idea that I'm going to tell them anything, not going to happen. So I want them to figure it out for themselves. And we talk about other topics too, like their family and so on and so forth, healthy relationships. And we're also just starting now in the group to actually implement the ACEs questionnaire, and that'll be in both groups, I think, just for them. I think it helps normalize things for them, to help them understand that they're not alone, that a lot of people have gone through these kind of things, and that a lot of times what they're experiencing, how do they put it, that it's a normal reaction to an abnormal event. And so I based it, what was it, April that we had that, Paper Tigers?
Yep, and there's gonna be 2 more showings coming up in
Wonderful.
September, hosted by the Children's Hospital. So watch for those coming out through the updates as well.
If you get a chance to watch it, I would encourage everybody to watch it. What a powerful video and documentary. And so, you know, it felt good to be, you know, have that confirming that what we're doing is the right thing. We're in the right direction. Kids need it, and what they, you know, really brought out of this is kids need at least one stable, caring person in their life. And just that, I mean, just by having that one, it's amazing how they can actually begin to blossom. And I loved how they also talked about language. We're so used to, why? Why did you do that? Why did you? And instead, we started to ask, what happened? What happened to you? Again, trying to help minimize, okay, let's face it. As a therapist, when you ask, and I try never to use that word why, immediately your client's defenses go up faster than the Starship Enterprise. Let me tell you, woo! I got smiles back there. You know what I'm talking about. So again, I like to ask, you know, what happened? I'm a Trekkie, not really. So we've started a pilot program, and that's one of the things that Melissa asked me to talk about. This I approached in January, the Wausau School District, asked them, I sat down with Jeff Lindahl and Andy Grimm, to talk about what can we do, because we need to get to these kids sooner, that we have missed opportunities when they get in trouble with truancy, or there's maybe like an e-cigarette they're caught with, you know, some other rule violation that is surrounding potential substance use at the school, right? So I thought I'd have to really sell them on it, and I didn't. They said, let's go. I was like, yay, let's do this. So we started in April. It was an 8-week group at Horace Mann. And once a week, I met with the kids, and we were talking about the topics that was a few slides back. And initially, it was just this. There were 6 8th graders, and we wanted to start with that. This is just a trial run. And it was looked at like early intervention. You know, by group 3, it was kind of cool. And he approached me and said, apparently the word's gotten out. And I said, okay. And we were asked to expand it next year into John Muir. And it will be so let me show you that. So fall of 2016, both Horace Mann and John Muir. It will be an 8-week group, once a week, in the school. And it will be expanded 6th through 8th grade, and up to 10 kids per group. It will be in the 2nd and 4th quarters of the year in both. So that's an opportunity to potentially work with 40 kids. that is awesome. You know, I still feel like it's, you know, a drop in the pond, but it's forward movement. Because, you know, what I told them at week 3, I said, you know, I know that you thought this was going to be like an early intervention thing. Well, they're neck deep in it, so we have to go younger. So, and I know, like with the United Way, that's also stuff that on the youth partnership that we're working on as well is getting to younger kids. So, now the Choices Track 2, that's Track 1, and that's again a psychoeducational group. Choices Track 2, we have 2 groups, a boys group and a girls group. I did that about a little over a year ago. Yeah, about a little over a year ago. I'd have 2 separate groups. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, the boys meet. Tuesdays and Thursdays, the girls meet. It's from 4 to 6 p.m., Monday through Thursday. My co-facilitator with the boys group is Curtis Mallow, and Stephen Korsnick is my group co-facilitator with the girls. And it's been a 14-week, we're actually expanding it to 16 weeks because you feel like you just start making progress with these kids, and then they're gone. So we said, let's, you know, expand it a little longer so we have a little more time with these kids. Because one of the things we know about treatment, it's not necessarily the intensity of treatment, but it's how long we keep people in treatment. That has much better outcomes. And again, it's trauma informed. So these are some of the topics that we talk about. Risk-taking behaviors, what's behind it, and so we're doing at least 1 or 2 groups on that. We spend quite a bit of time on the lost childhood, and I like to ask that question. That's kind of how I start that group out. What sort of things take away from your childhood? The self, I want the kids to understand bad choices, not bad kids. You are awesome, you are amazing, you are valuable, you are worthy, you are worthwhile. I want them to understand that they're beautiful. We talk about things like trust, you know, friends. Who do you trust? How, you know, who do you not trust? How do you measure that? What kind of characteristics does a real friend have versus a using buddy? And then another one we spend quite a bit of time on is the heavy hitters, the disrespect, the anger, the shame, because there are a lot of emotions that these kids are dealing with, and we want them to have a place to be heard. More stuff we talk about, families, family history of substance abuse, grief and loss, that's a big one, taking responsibility, self-forgiveness, forgiving others, that's another big one, and also goal setting, because I want them to learn how to do that, learn how to set a goal for themselves and to break it into manageable steps so that they can reach those goals. More information on the fact that trauma and substance abuse are highly correlated, and especially with kids. And I thought, what better example than to let you see, this is a board from one of my groups, and I asked that question, what things take away from your childhood? These are their answers. Parent absence, and I might have put it into a little better language, but it's their examples. Parental absence, family intoxication, parental substance abuse, juvenile detention, gang involvement, drugs, custody issues, being parentalized. In other words, that they have become the parents taking care of their mother or father who are abusing substances. Sexual assault, abuse, physical abuse, death of loved one, verbal, emotional abuse, bullying, poverty, natural disasters, being the new kid. Did I say new kind? New kid. Like when they move. Sometimes we have kids that have moved a lot. Financial problems, racism, moving a lot, not being able to be their self, feeling that they have to put on a mask for people. War, toxic relationships, domestic violence, feeling lost, no purpose, parental incarceration, no support system, homelessness, unrealistic expectations, medical problems, divorce, parental mental health problems, foster home, dropping out of school, becoming a parent, lack of safety, have help support, what was that? Oh, have to help support their family. Witnessing crimes, participating in crimes, using with parents working too much, so they're never home, never able to be present. step-parent conflict, one-parent family, bad neighborhood, neglect, parental lies, and broken promises. That's their list, not mine. Every time I see it, I have chills again. Whew. So, through the trauma experience, there's often a loss of trust. When they come in the door, I don't expect them to trust me. Why should they? Because most of the adults in their lives have let them down, period. So trauma, there's no, equals fear, equals no trust. So again, the only person, and I'll ask them that, when you walked in the door, who is the only person you really trust? And they'll tell me, myself. And I want people to understand that the trauma is the filter through which they see everything. And I have these really awesome, like Mr. Magoo glasses that I like to take out when I do trainings, and I can't find them so bad. But it skews your perception, and that's why I like to use those, because it helps people understand how their perception of the world is skewed 24/7, and based on trauma, right? And so we have to understand that to be able to work with it. It distorts their perception of everything and everyone, heightens arousal, the fight or flight, and, defenses. We talk a lot about the defenses and how they've used them, the mask that they've shown the world and what's behind that. And of course, a lot of the kids will show a lot of anger, hostility, aggression, or they could be withdrawn, right? Again, they don't trust anybody, and why would they? Or my favorite, and their favorite, and they love to let me know that, is compliance. They're going to tell you whatever they think you want to hear so that you'll just get off their back. All right. Survival instincts. Their defenses have developed. It's a survival instinct. I think that's what people need to understand as well as they work with these kids. And I like to... I liken it to the rabbit or the deer, and they smell danger, and what do? They bolt, right? Well, that's like a lot of our clients, right? They bolt. I have a lot of kids that run away, and if they're not running away physically, they're running away through their substance use, right? And mentally, emotionally. So the message that Deb loves to give them, and they look at me like I'm ridiculous, and I don't care. I know they're taking it in. Is my favorite line from The Help, and whoever has not seen it, bad, no. You is kind, you is smart, you is important. So their inability to trust, obviously, really takes away from their ability to trust anybody. So we work to validate their experiences, validate their feelings, and give them choices. No quick fix. They don't trust anybody when they walk through the door. They've also often been re-victimized by the system, right? Let's just call it what it is. And we have to take time and earn their trust. And so that's kind of the philosophy of our choices group and what we do. And to answer your question, that one thing I didn't put in here, the youngest I've had is 12, and I've had kids age out into 18 and finish the group when they're 18. They've usually started when they're 17, but I'm not going to kick them out of the group because they turn 18. So, questions?
What's the process of referral? So who decides, how does that work within?
I get them from all over the place. It's been kind of crazy this last year. It has just exploded the places that we get referrals from. It's just making the phone call. A lot of times social workers will get a release and then give me the name and then have told the parent to call or guardian to call and get them. And sometimes just the social work will help set it up as well. We get voluntary, where it's just family members that will, parents are calling, my kid needs help. Doctor's offices, other counties, we're getting them from quite a few counties, surrounding counties, because we're kind of for this area.
Does a child need to be seeing a therapist in your office in order to be part of
Yeah,
the
they
group?
do. And I think that really is helpful because there's less divide and conquer because, they're kids. That's what you do when you're a kid. I remember well. not that old.
And Deb has brochures out there
I
with
do.
all the different programs that are offered. Do you have flyers for the parent group out there too?
I do not. Well, I think it's actually, one of the parts as well that I have in the group, I didn't put that in here, is a parent component that at least once a month I'm meeting with the parents, as many as I can get in the room, and we're talking about boundary setting, your house, your rules. It's not a democracy, believe it or not, and emotional objectivity so that they make, decisions that are in the best interest of their kids and not for their comfort. Because parenting isn't always comfortable, right?
It's a closed group for those 16
It's a closed
weeks.
group, yep. I might for the first week or two allow other kids in. The only time generally I let kids in other than that is when somebody's coming right out of Libertas, right out of inpatient in. I'm not gonna make them wait for 6 weeks or 2 months to get in. They need, a warm handoff and be immediately in the group. But that's usually the only time I try to change those dynamics.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before I bring up Jada, I'm just going to show, for those of you that aren't familiar with the adverse childhood experiences that Deb referenced, if you go to Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and you type in ACEs, they have some great, infographics and materials that list out what some of those ACEs are. And again, just because you may have some of these in your life does not necessarily mean that you will turn to substance abuse or some other negative behavior. But the likelihood is much greater the more of these that you have. So there's a great infographic you can download. We've got trainers in our community that if you're interested in having somebody talk about ACEs, Aaron Ruff, I'm sure he could get you a list of trainers. He's one of them, a colleague here with the AOD Partnership. So I definitely would suggest, if you're not familiar, check it out. And we do have a meeting April of last year, I believe, that we had someone talk about ACEs at that meeting. So you can actually watch a video on it as well. With that, I'm going to invite up Jada to tell her story for us today. I told her it's a warm group, it's a warm welcome. So Jada, if you'd like to come up and share. And Sue, if you want to prompt anything.
I'm Jada DeAngelis. I'm 17 years old and I'm a recovering addict. Some things that led up to me using, I'm just going to share with you guys first so I don't just, start in there right away. When I was at the age of 2 years old, my father had passed away. A year after that, my sister passed away. And growing up, I, had really not too many people my mom was using when I was younger, so I don't, remember too much. But at the age of 8 years old, my mom's brother sexually assaulted me until I was at the age of 11 years old. And that's when we started learning about, that it's wrong and you should tell people about it. And, there's people out there that do care. And I told my counselor and we went from there. At the age of 12, I was really traumatized and I felt alone and I didn't really have many friends, and I was always the one who looked weird to other people or was too big or just getting bullied in elementary school. And then I would kind of search out for anyone really that could make me feel worth something, and I reached out to the wrong person, and I let that person take control over me when I was 12, and it was a lot of emotional abuse, and eventually it got physical for me. Sorry. Sorry. after my mom had, thank you, helped me get out of that relationship, after that, I started, well, he was the one who actually got me high for my first time off of marijuana. And it took me a while to kind of get out of that relationship, but when I did, I was hanging around the crowd that he was, and I started huffing like air freshener and keyboard cleaner stuff, different, pretty much anything that I could with a friend who actually passed away about 2.5 years ago from that. And then when I was 14, I was still in not such of a good crowd. And when I was 14, that's the first time I ever used methamphetamines. It wasn't that frequent at first until I kept realizing I was going around the same people again and again. And when I was turning 15, I ended up losing my friend to, huffing. And that was really hard on me because I felt that I was the one who got her into that. So I've kind of held that guilt, throughout those, like these 2 years that have gone by. After she passed away, another close friend of mine that she used to date, he ended up passing away too. He overdosed. I was in the hospital with him when he passed away, which also made it very hard for me to deal with that trauma as well. After he passed away, sorry, just trying to, I overdosed in my bedroom and I took 99 sleeping pills, a whole bottle, and I cut myself. After that, I went to the healthcare center for 2 weeks, maybe 3, I'm not exactly sure. And then I got out, I started using again, and then eventually at a party, I ended up snorting 4 Vicodin, drinking, I just got out, I'm having fun with my friends, at least I thought so. And I was puking, I don't remember too much, it was not a good time like it was supposed to be. And my friends told me that they were gonna take me home, but they didn't take me home, they took me to the hospital. And I was really mad that they took me to the hospital because I was very intoxicated and, under drugs. So I got physical with them, I was hitting, punching, kicking them. I was mad now, I'm really thankful that they did take me there. I was hospitalized after that night for 2 weeks. I was breathing on a ventilator. I had a machine breathing for me. It wasn't intentional, the overdose wasn't, so they didn't feel that I needed to go and get further help after that. But the doctors told me that if they had taken me there any later, that I wouldn't be here today. One of the hardest things for me around that time was my mom telling me, it was really hard to see my baby, not being able to breathe on her own. And that's kind of stuck, with me for a very long time, because I love my mom a lot, and she's always there for me. And it just hurt to see her hurt. After that, my social worker, she told me if you fail another UA that I'm going to put you in rehab. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I ended up failing with it, failing my UA again for methamphetamines. And I went to the healthcare center again. And I was there for, another 2 weeks or so. And the psychiatrist there, was telling me, you can do it, and if you feel ready, then, you can stay here for a little bit until you feel comfortable to go home where you feel that you're safe and stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna use anymore and stuff like that. And I ended up cleaning my room when I got out, and I found some more methamphetamines. And I skipped school. I think I used it like around a Thursday, didn't go Friday, had the weekend, didn't go for part of the week. And I was using, and it was morning time, and my caseworker, she's in here with us today, she came to my house. She was worried about me, and I came to the door. My pupils were large, and I, was tweaking, quote unquote, and I just kind of told her straight up, and I was like, Miranda, I relapsed, and I've been up for like 3 or 4 days. I'm really, out of it, and I don't know, I think I want to get help. And she asked me, okay, well, where is the stuff? Where did you put the drugs? Where is the utensils? Like, where is everything? And I flushed the rest of the drugs that I had, and then I threw out one. She helped, well, she didn't like touch anything or anything, but she kind of helped me throw it away, and she even came back and looked in the garbage and made sure that it was still in there. And we took the garbage out, and she took me to the hospital, and she let my mom drive me there, which was helpful because I got to, see her for a bit before I knew where I was going. After the hospital, I was at the healthcare center for about a month and a half, or maybe, it was just about a month, and then they had transferred me to Winnebago Mental Health Institute, and I went to rehab from there. I was there for 3 months. I learned a lot about myself just being away from, I kind of felt like I was away from myself, but at the same time I was still finding myself in the process there. And my AOD counselor there had really helped me, and I walked in and she's like, well, what things, have you gone through? And I was like, that has nothing to do with why I'm here. I'm here, to go to rehab and, get out. And I was being so stubborn, and eventually I realized, well, it does go hand in hand, and it was good to talk about things, get things out, and just kind of find myself in where I wanted to be, and realize, how far I really can make it if I do try. Let's see. So after I got out of rehab, I was referred to Deb, and I completed her Choices program, and there's a recovery program after that, and that's if you complete the program and you're complying and stuff, and I completed that as well. And thank you, Deb. You did teach me a lot. It was very nice to go there and be understood by not only her, but other people that were in the rooms with me. That was really helpful too. So where I am today, while during my freshman and sophomore year, I only had 4 credits because I wasn't going to school. And then this year, I ended up getting 10.75 credits just my junior year from being sober, and actually going to school and putting myself to my full potential. So I'm only a few credits behind, and then I should be able to graduate on time, which I didn't think I was going to be able to do. After I got out of rehab as well, I was working at Justice and Dairy Queen, and I was kind of overworking myself. I was still kind of stressed because it was like a newer recovery thing, but now I got offered a position at Shopco, and that's where I am now. I'm getting good hours there, and I'm not trying to really overwork myself anymore. And then I wrote down today, I've been sober since March 17th of 2015. So I've been sober for 1 year and 139 days today. And one more thing, to any of the adults who want to help people like me or adults, anyone who needs it. I acted stubborn, and so I'm sure other kids or adults will too. But just don't give up on them, because even though they seem that they don't want the help, deep down they know that they're not doing good and they do need the help. And it's really meaningful it was really meaningful for me to have someone not give up on me and say, no, you're not gonna do that, or, even to just kind of put their foot down and take a role in my life that helped me eventually get to where I am today. So even if we are stubborn, just keep trying, and some people it might not work for, some people it will, and you just gotta keep trying and just hope for the best for them.
Thank you so much, Jada, for sharing that. I think she's fabulous. She's a fabulous girl. I think you guys should give her another round of applause. One of the things I'm going to close with is, for those of you that haven't seen it, there's a video that looks at the way we look at addiction is all wrong. And it really looks at addiction being the opposite of connection. So I'm just going to close with this. A reminder to do your evaluations. You can leave them at your spot. It's 5 minutes. It'll take us right up to about 1 o'clock. So again, thank you everybody for coming. Enjoy.
What causes, say, heroin addiction? This is a really stupid question, right? It's obvious. We all know it. Heroin causes heroin addiction. Here's how it works. If you use heroin for 20 days, by day 21, your body would physically crave the drug ferociously because there are chemical hooks in the drug. That's what addiction means. But there's a catch. Almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. If you, for example, break your hip, you'll be taken to a hospital and you'll be given loads of diamorphine for weeks or even months. Diamorphine is heroin. It's in fact much stronger heroin than any addict can get on the street because it's not contaminated by all the stuff drug dealers dilute it with. There are people near you being given loads of deluxe heroin in hospitals right now, so at least some of them should become addicts. But this has been closely studied. It doesn't happen. Your grandmother wasn't turned into a junkie by her hip replacement. Why is that? Our current theory of addiction comes in part from a series of experiments that were carried out earlier in the 20th century. The experiment is simple. You take a rat and put it in a cage with 2 water bottles. One is just water, the other is water laced with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time you run this experiment, the rat will become obsessed with the drugged water and keep coming back for more and more until it kills itself. But in the 1970s, Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology, noticed something odd about this experiment. The rat is put in the cage all alone. It has nothing to do but take the drugs. What would happen, he wondered, if we tried this differently? So he built Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats. It's a lush cage where the rats would have colored balls, tunnels to scamper down, plenty of friends to play with, and they could have loads of sex. Everything a rat about town could want. And they would have the drugged water and the normal water bottles. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, rats hardly ever use the drugged water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. But maybe this is a quirk of rats, right? Well, helpfully, there was a human experiment along the same lines, the Vietnam War. 20% of American troops in Vietnam were using a lot of heroin. People back home were really panicked because they thought there would be hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war was over. But a study followed the soldiers home and found something striking. They didn't go to rehab. They didn't even go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped after they got home. If you believe the old theory of addiction, that makes no sense. But if you believe Professor Alexander's theory, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're put into a horrific jungle in a foreign country where you don't want to be, and you could be forced to kill or die at any moment, doing heroin is a great way to spend your time. But if you go back to your nice home with your friends and your family, it's the equivalent of being taken out of that first cage and put into a human rat park. It's not the chemicals, it's your cage. We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. We all feel it. Since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has been steadily declining. At the same time, the amount of floor space in their homes has been steadily increasing. To choose floor space over friends, to choose stuff over connection. The war on drugs we've been fighting for almost a century now has made everything worse. Instead of helping people heal and getting their life together, we have cast them out from society. We have made it harder for them to get jobs and become stable. We take benefits and support away from them if we catch them with drugs. We throw them in prison cells, which are literally cages. We put people who are not well in a situation that makes them feel worse and hate them for not recovering. For too long, we've talked only about individual recovery from addiction. But we need now to talk about social recovery, because something has gone wrong with us as a group. We have to build a society that looks a lot more like Rat Park and a lot less like those isolated cages. We are going to have to change the unnatural way we live and rediscover each other. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. This video is a collaboration with Johan Hari, the author of the book Chasing the Scream: The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs. He was very kind to work with us on this video to spread the word. We recommend that you give the book a try. Our videos are made thanks to your support on patreon.com. If you want to help us make more of them, we really appreciate your support. We made an interactive version of this video together with some friends. See the link in the description.